Pain and Joker. IMDb Brief, we break down visible character from his filmography is.
Now I realize. Listen, dear. You did.
Before he became the Joker, a broken bar, he was just a man the world refused to hear. In this video, Real Signal Studio dives deep into Joker 2019, the dark facts, hidden meanings, and shocking truths behind one of the most disturbing character studies ever put on screen. Joker is a 2019 American psychological thriller film directed by Todd Phillips, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Scott Silver. The movie is based on characters from DC Comics and stars Joaquin Phoenix in the lead role. Instead of following the usual comic book style, the film presents a new and different origin story for the Joker. The story is set in a dark and broken Gotham City and focuses on Arthur Fleck, a poor and mentally ill clown who dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian. As Arthur is repeatedly ignored, humiliated, and pushed aside by society, his mental state slowly collapses. His pain and anger eventually turn into moral emptiness, which leads him to inspire a violent uprising against the rich and powerful. The film also features Robert De Niro, Zazie Beetz, and Frances Conroy in important supporting roles. Joker was distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures and produced by Warner Bros. Pictures and DC Films, along with Village Roadshow Pictures, Braun Creative, and joint effort. Todd Phillips first came up with the idea for Joker in 2016 and worked on the script with Scott Silver throughout 2017. Their main inspiration came from deep character-focused films of the 1970s, especially movies directed by Martin Scorsese such as Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. Scorsese was originally involved with the project as a producer, while the film borrows a few story ideas from famous Batman comics like The Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns. The creators did not want to closely follow any single comic. They also made it clear that the movie would not be connected to any previous Batman films. Joaquin Phoenix became attached to the project in early 2018 and was officially cast a few months later, with most of the other actors joining soon after. Filming took place in New York City, Jersey City, and Newark between September and December 2018. Joker made history by becoming the first live-action Batman-related movie to receive an R rating. The film had its world premiere at the 76th Venice International Film Festival on August 31, 2019, where it won the prestigious Golden Lion Award. Joker was released in theaters in the United States on October 4, 2019. Critics had mixed opinions about the film, but audiences turned it into a massive success. It broke records for an October release and earned more than $1 billion worldwide, making it the first R-rated movie to ever reach that milestone. For several years, it remained the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time, until it was later surpassed by Deadpool Wolverine in 2024. Joker also became the sixth highest-grossing film of 2019 and received many awards and nominations. A sequel titled Joker, Folie Tilde, starring Lady Gaga, was released in 2024 but failed to impress critics or audiences and did not perform well at the box office. In 1981, Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, works as a party clown and dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian. He is a mentally ill, poor man who is ignored and mistreated by society. Arthur lives with his elderly mother, Penny, Frances Conroy, in Gotham City. Gotham is full of crime, joblessness, and decay. Many people are struggling to survive, and even the better parts of the city look run down because social services are failing. Penny spends her days writing letters to wealthy businessman Thomas Wayne, whom she once worked for as a maid over 30 years ago. She believes Thomas will help them, but no reply ever comes. Arthur suffers from a neurological condition that causes sudden, uncontrollable laughter. He takes medication provided by social services, but it barely helps his deep depression. Arthur feels empty and hopeless, and none of the medicines improve his mental state. One day, while working outside a store dressed as a clown and holding a sign, a group of teenagers steals the sign and attacks him in an alley. The sign is broken during the beating. Arthur's boss, Josh Pace, tells him the store owner wants the sign back and warns that the cost will be taken from Arthur's paycheck. Arthur's co-worker Randall, Glenn Fleshler, later gives him a gun, claiming it is for protection. Arthur meets his neighbor Sophie, Zazie Beetz, a single mother. After seeing her in the elevator, Arthur follows her to work the next day, which she notices. Later that evening, Sophie visits Arthur's apartment, and Arthur asks her out. Arthur invites Sophie to his stand-up comedy performance, and the two appear to begin a relationship. Arthur is a devoted fan of late-night talk show host Murray Franklin. He attends a live taping of the show and shouts "I love you" to Murray from the audience. Murray notices Arthur and brings him on stage. Arthur talks about caring for his mother and says he believes his purpose is to bring happiness to others. Murray jokingly tells Arthur he is like the son he never had, which deeply affects Arthur and makes him feel valued. While performing as a clown at a children's hospital, Arthur's gun accidentally falls out of his pocket. Randall lies and claims Arthur bought the gun himself. Arthur is fired from his job. Later, while riding the subway in full clown makeup, Arthur is attacked by three drunk Wayne Enterprises businessmen who were harassing a woman. When Arthur starts laughing uncontrollably, they beat him. Arthur shoots two of them in self-defense and then deliberately kills the third. Shaken, Arthur returns home and later goes to Sophie's apartment, where they sleep together. Thomas Wayne, now running for mayor, publicly condemns the murders and insults poor people by calling them clowns. This sparks protests across Gotham, with demonstrators wearing clown masks inspired by Arthur. Government budget cuts shut down social services, leaving Arthur without medication. As chaos grows, Arthur feels noticed for the first time and becomes more confident. Arthur performs at a comedy club, but the show goes badly. He cannot control his laughter and struggles with his jokes. Sophie remains the only positive presence in his life. Murray Franklin later mocks Arthur by airing clips from the performance on his show and calls him Joker, humiliating Arthur. Arthur then discovers a letter Penny wrote to Thomas Wayne, claiming Thomas is Arthur's real father. Arthur angrily confronts his mother for hiding this from him. Arthur visits Wayne Manor and briefly speaks with Thomas's young son Bruce, Dante Pereira Olson. He is chased away after getting into a confrontation with Alfred Pennyworth, Douglas Hodge. Soon after, detectives visit Arthur to question him about the subway killings. The stress causes Penny to suffer a stroke, and she is hospitalized. Arthur confronts Thomas Wayne at a public event. Thomas tells Arthur that Penny is mentally ill and that Arthur was adopted. Still unsure, Arthur breaks into Arkham State Hospital and reads Penny's records. He learns she was delusional and believed she had a relationship with Thomas Wayne. The files reveal that Arthur was adopted and abused as a child by Penny's boyfriend, which caused his brain damage and condition. Distressed, Arthur goes to Sophie's apartment uninvited. Sophie is terrified and asks him to leave, revealing their relationship was only in Arthur's imagination. The next day, Arthur smothers Penny to death in the hospital. Arthur is invited onto Murray Franklin's show because the clips of his comedy have gone viral. While getting ready, Randall and another former co-worker, Gary, visit him. Arthur kills Randall for betraying him but spares Gary because he was always kind. On the way to the studio, Arthur is chased by detectives on a train filled with clown protesters. When a detective accidentally shoots a protester, a riot breaks out, allowing Arthur to escape. On live television, Arthur asks Murray to introduce him as Joker. He jokes starkly, admits to the subway murders, and criticizes society for abandoning people like him. Arthur then shoots Murray on air and is arrested as riots erupt across Gotham. An ambulance crashes into the police car, freeing Arthur. During the chaos, Thomas and Martha Wayne are murdered in an alley in front of young Bruce. Arthur stands on the police car, dances, and paints a smile on his face with his own blood. Later, Arthur is seen in Arkham State Hospital laughing to himself during a therapy session. When asked about the joke, he says the therapist wouldn't understand. He walks away, leaving bloody footprints behind as an orderly chases him through the halls. Arthur Fleck is a lonely and troubled man trying to survive in a harsh and broken Gotham City. He works as a party clown for a small agency, wearing bright makeup and fake smiles while advertising stores or entertaining children. Despite his efforts to make people laugh, Arthur's life is filled with poverty, rejection, and humiliation. He lives in a small, run-down apartment with his sick and elderly mother, Penny Fleck, whom he deeply cares for. Penny depends on Arthur for everything, and Arthur's entire world revolves around taking care of her. Their life is quiet, repetitive, and filled with financial struggle. Arthur dreams of becoming a successful stand-up comedian. He believes that making people laugh is his purpose in life. However, his dream constantly clashes with reality. Arthur suffers from severe mental health problems, including a neurological condition that causes sudden and uncontrollable laughter, often at inappropriate moments. This condition makes social interactions extremely difficult for him. People misunderstand his laughter and often react with fear, anger, or cruelty. Arthur also struggles with depression and relies on medication provided by Gotham's social services, which barely keep him functioning. Gotham City itself is decaying. Crime is everywhere, unemployment is high, and the gap between the rich and the poor continues to grow. The wealthy live comfortably while people like Arthur are forgotten and ignored. Social services are underfunded, and those who need help the most are left behind. Arthur regularly meets with the social worker who listens to him, half-heartedly, offering little real support. Even she seems worn down by the broken system. Arthur feels invisible, as if no one truly sees or cares about him. At work, Arthur is bullied and mistreated. While dressed as a clown holding a sign for advertising, he is attacked by a group of teenagers who steal his sign and beat him in an alley. Instead of receiving sympathy, Arthur is blamed by his boss and threatened with punishment. Moments like this reinforce his belief that the world is cruel and unfair. His co-worker Randall gives him a gun, claiming it is for protection, but this small act will later have devastating consequences. Arthur tries to find comfort in small things. He watches a late-night talk show hosted by Murray Franklin and imagines himself being accepted and loved by Murray as a father figure. In Arthur's fantasies, Murray praises him and treats him with kindness, as something Arthur has rarely experienced in real life. These imagined moments bring Arthur brief happiness, but they also highlight how disconnected he is from reality. Arthur also becomes fixated on his neighbor, Sophie, a single mother. In his mind, Sophie represents hope, connection, and love. Arthur imagines a relationship with her that gives him comfort and confidence. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that much of this relationship exists only in Arthur's imagination. His loneliness is so deep that his mind creates a version of life where he is not alone. As Arthur continues to perform stand-up comedy, his mental state worsens. On stage, his jokes fail, and his uncontrollable laughter disrupts his performance. The audience is uncomfortable rather than amused. Later, clips of his performance are mocked on Murray Franklin's show, turning Arthur into a public joke. This humiliation deeply wounds him. The man he admired most has now become another voice laughing at him. Meanwhile, Arthur's relationship with his mother begins to unravel. Penny has always told Arthur that Thomas Wayne, a wealthy businessman, is his real father. She writes letters to Wayne, hoping for help. Arthur initially believes this story, clinging to the idea that his life might have meaning or importance. However, as Arthur investigates further, he discovers horrifying truths about his past. He learns that he was adopted, that his mother suffered from delusions, and that Arthur was abused as a child by Penny's boyfriend. This abuse caused the brain damage responsible for his condition. The realization shatters Arthur completely. At the same time, Gotham City is becoming more violent. After Arthur kills 3 wealthy men on the subway, first in self-defense, then out of rage, the city erupts in chaos. Protesters wearing clown masks take to the streets, using the clown as a symbol of rebellion against the rich. Arthur, for the first time in his life, feels seen. He feels powerful. He believes that his actions have meaning, even if that meaning is routed in violence. As social services shut down due to budget cuts, Arthur loses access to his medication. Without treatment or support, his grip on reality collapses. He realizes that the society he tried so hard to please never cared about him. This realization transforms him. Arthur stops trying to be liked. He stops pretending. Instead, he fully embraces the chaos inside him. Arthur's final transformation occurs when he appears on Murray Franklin's show. Introducing himself as Joker, he openly admits to the murders and delivers a disturbing speech about society's cruelty toward people like him. In his mind, this is his moment of truth. When he shoots Murray live on television, Arthur completes his transformation. He is no longer Arthur Fleck, the forgotten, broken man. He is Joker, a symbol of chaos, anger, and rebellion. By the end, Arthur stands amid a city burning with riots and violence. The crowd cheers him as he dances on a police car, smearing blood across his face to form a twisted smile. For the first time, Arthur feels accepted not as a man, but as an idea. His journey shows how neglect, cruelty, and a broken system can turn a vulnerable person into something terrifying. Joker is not born from madness alone, but from a world that refuses to care. In the decaying urban landscape of 1981 Gotham City, Arthur Fleck navigates a life marred by poverty, mental illness, and societal indifference. Employed as a party clown for a company called Ha Ha's, Arthur dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian, but his existence is fraught with challenges. He lives in a run-down apartment with his frail mother, Penny Fleck, who obsessively writes letters to billionaire Thomas Wayne, whom she believes will rescue them from their plight. Arthur suffers from a condition that causes uncontrollable bouts of laughter at inopportune moments, a symptom of pseudo-bulbar effect, which alienates him further from those around him. He relies on social services for his medication, attending therapy sessions where he journals his dark thoughts, including the poignant reflection that the worst part of having a mental illness is people expecting you to behave as if you don't. Arthur's daily humiliations escalate when he is brutally beaten by a group of teenagers while advertising in clown makeup on the streets. In response, his co-worker Randall lends him a revolver for protection, despite company policy against it. Meanwhile, Arthur develops a delusional infatuation with his neighbor, Sophie Demond, a single mother living down the hall. He imagines a budding romance, following her to work and fantasizing about her support. His attempts at comedy falter during a gig at a children's hospital. He accidentally drops the gun from his pocket, leading to his immediate firing by his boss, Hoyt Vaughn. On the subway ride home, still in full clown regalia, Arthur is harassed and assaulted by 3 intoxicated Wall Street executives from Wayne Investments. In a moment of desperation and rage, he shoots 2 in self-defense and executes the third as he attempts to flee. This act, unintended at first, sparks a chain reaction in the city. The murders capture public attention, with the clown masked killer becoming a symbol for the disenfranchised. Thomas Wayne, running for mayor, publicly condemns the killings on television, labeling the perpetrator as a coward and dismissing the poor as clowns envious of the successful. This rhetoric only fuels unrest, as protesters adopt clown masks and rally against the elite. Arthur, watching from home, feels a twisted sense of validation. Budget cuts to social services abruptly end his access to therapy and medication, exacerbating his deteriorating mental state. He attends an open mic night at a comedy club, where Sophie appears in his hallucination, cheering him on. However, his performance is disastrous, interrupted by laughter fits that derail his jokes. Discovering a letter from Penny to Thomas Wayne implying Arthur is Wayne's illegitimate son from an affair during her employment as his housekeeper, Arthur confronts his mother. She insists it's true, but Arthur's doubts grow. He sneaks into Wayne Manor, interacting briefly with young Bruce Wayne through the gates before being chased off by butler Alfred Pennyworth. Penny suffers a stroke after being questioned by detectives investigating the subway murders, landing her in the hospital. Arthur's idol, late-night talk show host Murray Franklin, airs a clip of Arthur's failed stand-up on his show, mocking him and dubbing him Joker. This public humiliation deepens Arthur's isolation. Seeking answers, Arthur Gate crashes a charity event at a movie theater where Thomas Wayne is attending a screening of Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. Confronting Wayne in the bathroom, Arthur learns the truth. There was no affair. Penny, delusional and narcissistic, adopted Arthur as a child and fabricated the story. Visiting Arkham State Hospital, Arthur steals Penny's file, revealing a history of abuse. As a young mother, Penny allowed her boyfriend to physically harm Arthur, causing head trauma that led to his laughing condition. Devastated, Arthur returns to Sophie's apartment, only to realize their entire relationship was a figment of his imagination as she barely knows him and fears his intrusion. In the hospital, Arthur smothers Penny with the pillow, marking his full detachment from his past. Invited as a guest on Murray Franklin's show due to the viral clip, Arthur prepares meticulously, dyeing his hair green and donning a vibrant red suit. His former co-workers Randall and Gary visit to offer condolences. Arthur murders Randall with scissors for his role in the gun incident but spares the kind-hearted Gary. En route to the studio, detectives chase Arthur onto a subway filled with clown-masked protesters. A scuffle ensues, and a detective accidentally shoots a protester, inciting a riot that allows Arthur to escape. On live television, Arthur insists on being introduced as Joker. He delivers morbid jokes, confesses to the subway murders, and unleashes a tirade against society's treatment of the vulnerable, criticizing how the elite mock the suffering. Berating Murray for ridiculing him, Arthur shoots the host point-blank on air, sparking chaos. Riots erupt across Gotham as Arthur is arrested. His police car crashes into a mob of protesters, who free him. Standing atop the wreckage, Arthur dances triumphantly, smearing blood from his mouth into a grotesque smile as the crowd cheers. In a parallel tragedy, a rioter murders Thomas and Martha Wayne in an alley, orphaning young Bruce. The film closes with Arthur institutionalized at Arkham, laughing during a therapy session. When asked about the joke, he replies, "You wouldn't get it." He flees down the hall, leaving bloody footprints, chased by an orderly. Cast and character analysis. Joaquin Phoenix delivers a transformative performance as Arthur Fleck, who evolves into the Joker. To embody the character's physical and emotional frailty, Phoenix lost 52 pounds, resulting in a gaunt, skeletal appearance that underscores Arthur's vulnerability and eventual menace. Phoenix described the role as a profound character study, one that frightened him due to its depth, aiming to create a figure not easily identifiable as a traditional villain but as a product of societal neglect. His preparation involved studying pathological laughter disorders and drawing from real-life figures with similar afflictions, ensuring the laughs felt authentic and involuntary. Phoenix's portrayal emphasizes Arthur's isolation, with subtle mannerisms like awkward dances that blend pathos and threat, inspired by silent film stars like Buster Keaton and Ray Bolger. Robert De Niro portrays Murray Franklin, the charismatic yet cynical talk show host who becomes a pivotal antagonist in Arthur's narrative. De Niro's role pays homage to his own performance in The King of Comedy, where he played an obsessive fan-turned-stalker. Here, Murray represents the media's exploitative nature, using Arthur's vulnerability for ratings before dismissing him. De Niro brings a layer of weary sarcasm to the character, making his on-air demise a shocking climax. Zazie Beetz plays Sophie Demond, Arthur's imagined love interest. As a single mother struggling in the same decrepit building, Sophie symbolizes fleeting human connection in Arthur's delusional world. Beetz, a fan of Phoenix, noted how his intensity elevated her performance, adding authenticity to her grounded, empathetic portrayal. Frances Conroy embodies Penny Fleck, Arthur's ailing mother, whose delusions and past abuses shape her son's psyche. Conroy's performance conveys fragility and manipulation, with Hannah Gross portraying a younger Penny in flashbacks. Brett Cullen steps in as Thomas Wayne, a Trump-like billionaire whose paternalistic views ignite class tensions. Cullen replaced Alec Baldwin, who exited due to scheduling conflicts, and infuses Wayne with arrogance masked as benevolence. Douglas Hodge as Alfred Pennyworth offers a brief but stern presence, protecting young Bruce Wayne, played by Dante Pereira Olson, in a nod to the Batman origin. Supporting roles enriched the film's ensemble. Glenn Fleshler as Randall, the duplicitous co-worker who provides the gun, contrasts with Lee Gill's Gary, a dwarf colleague whose kindness spares him from Arthur's wrath. Bill Comp and Sheet Wiggum as detectives Garrity and Burke represent ineffectual law enforcement in a crumbling city. Mark Maron plays Gene Offland, Murray's producer, adding backstage tension. Sharon Washington as Arthur's social worker and Brian Tyree Henry as an Arkham clerk provide glimpses into the failing support systems. Josh Pace as Hoyt Vaughn, Arthur's boss, exemplifies workplace exploitation. Minor characters like the Wayne Investments employees, Ben Warhit, Michael Benz, Carl Lundstedt, serve as catalysts for Arthur's breaking point, while comedians Gary Gelman and Sam Morrill appear in the club scene. Uncredited cameos, such as Justin Theroux as a celebrity guest, add texture to the show's world. Production history. The genesis of Joker traces back to director Todd Phillips' dissatisfaction with the blockbuster formula of superhero films. After helming War Dogs in 2016, Phillips pitched the idea to Warner Brothers as a low-budget, character-driven exploration of a comic book villain, drawing from 1970s cinema like Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. Scorsese was initially attached as a producer, lending credibility to the project's gritty tone. Phillips collaborated with screenwriter Scott Silver throughout 2017 to craft a script that reimagined the Joker's origin outside the established DC Extended Universe. So, they borrowed elements from graphic novels like Batman, The Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns but prioritized originality, avoiding ties to previous Batman lore. Joaquin Phoenix's involvement began in early 2018, following his expressed interest in a villain character study years prior. Despite initial hesitations, Phoenix signed on in July 2018, green-lighting the film with a modest budget of $55–70 million. Warner Brothers aimed to differentiate it from the DCU, especially after Justice League's underperformance, positioning Joker as the inaugural entry in a potential series of standalone DC films. Reports surfaced of Jared Leto, the DCU's Joker, feeling alienated and attempting to derail the project, though sources close to him denied this. Phillips envisioned a Joaquin Phoenix universe, focusing on psychological depth over spectacle. Pre-production ramped up with casting announcements. Robert De Niro joined in July 2018, Zazie Beetz in August, and Frances Conroy shortly after, replacing Frances McDormand, who declined the role of Benny. Alec Baldwin was briefly cast as Thomas Wayne but withdrew due to conflicts, with Brett Cullen taking over. The script underwent revisions, incorporating themes of mental health and societal decay, inspired by real events like the 1984 New York subway vigilantism. An early draft leaked in April 2018, which Phillips welcomed for generating buzz. The original ending, where Arthur carves a smile into his face, was scrapped at Christopher Nolan's request to honor Heath Ledger's iconic portrayal in The Dark Knight. Principal photography commenced in September 2018 under the working title Romeo, primarily in New York City, with additional locations in Jersey City and Newark to capture Gotham's gritty aesthetic. Cinematographer Lawrence Sher used the Real Alexa-65 cameras for a large-format look, though plans for 70mm were abandoned due to costs. Filming wrapped on December 3, 2018, after intense shoots that included Phoenix's frequent walk-offs to maintain emotional authenticity. The iconic Joker stairs sequence in the Bronx became a tourist spot post-release but caused disruptions during production. A complaint from SAG-AFTRA regarding extras locked in train cars was resolved amicably. Post-production focused on editing by Jeff Groth, who trimmed scenes like Sophie's reaction to the Murray murder to preserve narrative ambiguity. Visual effects from Scanline VFX enhanced the city's oppressive atmosphere. The film earned an R rating for its violence and themes, a first for a live-action Batman-related theatrical release. Design and aesthetic choices. The production design meticulously recreated a 1981 Gotham as a metaphor for societal collapse, blending 1970s New York decay with elements like graffiti-covered subways, overflowing garbage, echoing the 1981 garbage strike, and dilapidated architecture. Locations such as the Brooklyn Army Terminal for Arkham's exterior and Metropolitan Hospital for interiors grounded the film in realism. Visual effects added towering skyscrapers to symbolize economic disparity. Color grading shifted from stale whites in Arthur's early life to warmer, jaundiced tones as his madness intensifies, blurring reality and delusion. Character design centered on Arthur's transformation. Phoenix's emaciated physique, achieved through a doctor-supervised diet, emphasized his fragility. His movements drew from Chaplin's Tramp for whimsy and Keaton for physical comedy, evolving into the Joker's fluid, dance-like menace. Makeup artist Nikki Letterman created a lived-in look, greasy hair, smudged clown paint that appears amateurish and unsettling. Costume designer Mark Bridges selected a palette of muted blues and maroons for Arthur's everyday wear, transitioning to the Joker's bold red suit, originally terracotta but changed for vibrancy. The ensemble contrasts with the grays of antagonists, subtly nodding to Batman's future color scheme. Themes and analysis. Joker delves into themes of mental illness, class warfare, and the consequences of societal neglect. Arthur's journey critiques how systemic failures to cut funding for social services, media sensationalism, and elite indifference breed extremism. The film portrays mental health not as villainy but as a symptom of abuse and isolation, with Arthur's laughter as a metaphor for suppressed pain. Analysts draw parallels to real-world issues like income inequality and the rise of populist movements, though Phillips insists it's apolitical, focusing on personal trauma. The unreliable narrator technique leaves ambiguities. Is Arthur truly the Joker, or an inspiration for the future villain? Influences from The Man Who Laughs, 1928, underscore the tragic clown archetype. Commentators debate its message. Some see it as empathetic to the marginalized, others as dangerously glorifying violence. Phoenix's performance invites sympathy, challenging viewers to confront complicity in societal breakdowns. Marketing strategies. Marketing emphasized mystery and intrigue. Phillips teased set photos on Instagram, building anticipation. A test footage reel in September 2018 featured Phoenix's transformation set to Laughing by the Guess Who. The first trailer debuted at CinemaCon in April 2019, using Smile by Jimmy Durante, evoking comparisons to Scorsese's works. It garnered positive buzz for its dark tone. A second trailer in August amplified hype. With the $120 million budget, promotions included experiential events and tie-ins. Post-release, Warner Bros. Cleverly used critical backlash in ads, quoting negative reviews to highlight controversy. Release details. Joker premiered at the 76th Venice International Film Festival on August 31, 2019, winning the Golden Lion amid an 8-minute standing ovation of the first comic book film to claim the top prize. It screened at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 9. The U.S. theatrical release followed on October 4, 2019, in standard, IMAX, and 70mm/35mm formats. A White House screening for President Trump occurred on November 16. Security concerns arose from fears of incel-inspired violence, prompted by a U.S. Army warning and FBI monitoring. Theaters banned costumes and face paint, increased police presence, and restricted unaccompanied minors. No incidents materialized, though the Aurora, Colorado, theater site of the 2012 Dark Knight Rises shooting opted out. Home media release included digital HD on December 17, 2019, and physical formats, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K UHD, on January 7, 2020. It streamed on HBO starting May 16, 2020, and joined HBO Max on launch day, May 27. Box office performance. Joker shattered expectations, grossing $1.079 billion worldwide against a $55 $70 million budget, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated film until Deadpool Wolverine in 2024. Domestically, it turned $335.5 million, opening with $96.20 million, the largest October debut, surpassing Venom. It set records for Thursday previews, $13.3 million, and widest R-rated release, 4,374 theaters. Drops were minimal, 41.8% in week 2, $55.9 million, holding strong through awards season. Internationally, it amassed $743.5 million, with top markets including Japan, $66.3 million, the UK, $57.9 million, and Mexico, $43.9 million. It crossed $1 billion in its fourth weekend, the first R-rated film to do so, yielding a net profit of $437 million after deductions. Critical reception. Critics were polarized, with a 68% approval on Rotten Tomatoes, average 7.3, and 59 1/100 on Metacritic. indicating mixed reviews. Praise centered on Phoenix's mesmerizing and Oscar-worthy performance, lauded for its raw intensity. IGN called it astonishing, while Variety hailed the film's bold examination of societal ills. Many appreciated its homage to 1970s cinema, viewing it as a cautionary tale on mental health and inequality. However, detractors labeled it derivative and nihilistic. The Guardian deemed it disappointing, IndieWire confused, and Time criticized its over-the-top violence without substance. CinemaScore gave a B+, with Post-Track reporting 84% positive audience feedback. Audience response and commentaries. Audiences embraced Joker, with viral memes and discussions amplifying its cultural footprint. Some interpreted it as a rally cry against elitism, others worried it romanticized violence. Phillips defended it as art-provoking debate, not endorsement. Commentators like David Ehrlich criticized its empty provocation, while Stephanie Zacharek saw it as empathetic. The film's ambiguity sparked analyses on incel culture, though creators distanced from such readings. Accolades. Joker garnered 11 Oscar nominations, winning 2, Best Actor for Phoenix, first DC win in acting, and Best Original Score for Hildur Guðnadóttir, first solo female winner. Phoenix also triumphed at the Golden Globes, BAFTAs, and SAG Awards. Guðnadóttir swept music categories, including a Grammy. The film won the Golden Lion at Venice, a first for a superhero adaptation. Cultural impact. Beyond box office, Joker influenced pop culture, inspiring protests worldwide. For example, clown masks in Lebanon, Chile. The Joker stares became a landmark. It sparked mental health discussions and debates on media violence. Parodies and memes proliferated, cementing its legacy as a divisive yet enduring work. Sequel information. A sequel, Joker, Folie Tilde, released in 2024, continues Arthur's story with Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. Directed by Phillips, it adopts a musical format, exploring shared delusions in Arkham. Despite mixed reviews, it expands the Joker universe. Development and pre-production. The genesis of Joker began independently through 2 separate creative visions that eventually converged into a singular, groundbreaking project. Between 2014 and 2015, Joaquin Phoenix expressed interest to his agent in starring in a low-budget character study about a comic book villain. Phoenix had been conceptualizing this idea roughly 1 to 2 years before director Todd Phillips conceived his version of Joker in 2016. Phoenix had previously turned down opportunities to join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, specifically declining roles that would require him to reprise characters across multiple films, such as Bruce Banner or Doctor Strange. His resistance to franchise commitments stemmed from his preference for standalone character-driven narratives. Initially, Phoenix ruled out the Joker for his character study concept, believing the character had been done before and couldn't offer anything new. His agent suggested arranging an exploratory meeting with Warner Brothers, but Phoenix declined and let the idea fade. Similarly, Todd Phillips had been offered opportunities to direct comic book films multiple times throughout his career but consistently declined because he found them too loud and uninteresting for his sensibilities. Phillips' approach to Joker emerged from his desire to create a different kind of comic book film altogether. According to Phillips, the project was designed to be grounded and separate from the typical superhero movie formula. He was drawn to the Joker because he believed there was no definitive portrayal of the character, which gave him substantial creative freedom. The director conceived Joker in 2016 and began developing the script with co-writer Scott Silver throughout 2017. The film's creative foundation drew heavily from character studies and films from the 1970s, particularly the work of Martin Scorsese. Phillips and Silver were specifically inspired by Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, both Scorsese masterpieces that explored alienated protagonists in urban settings. The film's premise also borrowed elements from Alan Moore and Brian Bolland's graphic novel Batman, The Killing Joke, which depicts the Joker as a failed stand-up comedian. The climactic talk show scene was inspired by a similar sequence in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. However, Phillips emphasized that the film does not follow anything directly from the comic books. stating that the freedom to create an original story was precisely what interested him. Phillips and Silver deliberately avoided the most common Joker origin story found in comics, where the character is disfigured after falling into a vat of acid, considering it too unrealistic for their grounded approach. Instead, they used certain elements of Joker lore to produce an entirely original narrative. Phillips wanted the film to feel as authentic as possible, and because the Joker lacks a definitive origin story in the source material, the writers enjoyed considerable creative freedom. They pushed each other daily to develop something completely unique and unexpected. The filmmakers retained the ambiguous multiple-choice nature of the Joker's past by positioning Arthur Fleck as an unreliable narrator, with entire storylines potentially being his delusions. They deliberately left the specific mental illnesses Arthur suffers from unclear, allowing multiple interpretations. Phillips stated that the entire film is intentionally open to interpretation, a creative decision that would later become one of the film's most discussed aspects. In April 2018, a draft of the film's script was leaked and spread across the internet. Phillips responded by clarifying that it was an old version from 6 months before filming began, and he declined to take legal action against its distribution, stating he liked having an outdated version circulate. This relaxed attitude toward the leaked script demonstrated Phillips' confidence in the evolving nature of his project. Following the disappointing critical and financial performance of Justice League in 2017, Warner Bros. Underwent significant restructuring. In January 2018, Walter Hamada replaced John Berg as the head of DC-based film production at the studio. Hamada systematically evaluated various DC films in development, canceling some projects while advancing others. Joker was greenlit to begin filming in late 2018 with a remarkably modest budget of approximately $55 to $62.5 million. In comparison, the previous villain-centered DC film, Suicide Squad, had cost $175 million to produce. The financing structure for Joker was unconventional for a major studio comic book film. The Toronto-based financing company Creative Wealth Media covered $25 million of the budget, while Village Roadshow Pictures and Brant Studios each contributed 25%. This co-financing arrangement meant Warner Bros. Would later share profits with these partners, but it also significantly reduced the studio's financial risk. The filmmakers retained the ambiguous multiple-choice nature of the Joker's past by positioning Arthur Fleck as an unreliable narrator, with entire storylines potentially being his delusions. They deliberately left the specific mental illnesses Arthur suffers from unclear, allowing multiple interpretations. Phillips stated that the entire film is intentionally open to interpretation, a creative decision that would later become one of the film's most discussed aspects. In April 2018, a draft of the film's script was leaked and spread across the internet. Phillips responded by clarifying that it was an old version from 6 months before filming began, and he declined to take legal action against its distribution, stating he liked having an outdated version circulate. This relaxed attitude toward the leaked script demonstrated Phillips' confidence in the evolving nature of his project. Following the disappointing critical and financial performance of Justice League in 2017, Warner Bros. Underwent significant restructuring. In January 2018, Walter Hamada replaced John Berg as the head of DC-based film production at the studio. Hamada systematically evaluated various DC films in development, canceling some projects while advancing others. Joker was greenlit to begin filming in late 2018 with a remarkably modest budget of approximately $55 to $62.5 million. In comparison, the previous villain-centered DC film, Suicide Squad, had cost $175 million to produce. The financing structure for Joker was unconventional for a major studio comic book film. The Toronto-based financing company Creative Wealth Media covered $25 million of the budget, while Village Roadshow Pictures and Brant Studios each contributed 25%. This co-financing arrangement meant Warner Bros. Would later share profits with these partners, but it also significantly reduced the studio's financial risk. Joker became the first live-action theatrical film in the Batman franchise to receive an R rating from the Motion Picture Association of America. officially classified for strong bloody violence, disturbing behavior, language, and brief sexual images. In the United Kingdom, the British Board of Film Classification gave the film a 15 certificate for strong bloody violence and language. Phillips made a deliberate creative decision to set Gotham City in the 1980s with a visual aesthetic resembling New York City. According to Phillips, this temporal and spatial choice was made to separate the film from the established DC cinematic universe. The director wanted to create a standalone story that existed independently from other superhero films. Mark Friedberg, the production designer, established the filming location of Gotham Square in Newark specifically because the area still retained visible poverty, which aligned with the film's thematic concerns about economic inequality and urban decay. The casting process brought together an exceptional ensemble. Joaquin Phoenix was always the first choice for Arthur Fleck, given that his initial interest in a character study predated the project's formal development. Robert De Niro was cast as Murray Franklin, the late-night talk show host, in a role that served as a deliberate reference to his performances in Scorsese films, particularly The King of Comedy, where De Niro played an aspiring comedian. Zazie Beetz joined the cast as Sophie DeMond, Arthur's neighbor and imagined love interest. Frances McDormand was initially offered the role of Penny Fleck, Arthur's mother, but declined. Frances Conroy ultimately took the part. In late July 2018, Mark Maron and Brian Callen joined the cast. Alec Baldwin was cast as Thomas Wayne on August 27, 2018, but dropped out just 2 days later due to scheduling conflicts. Baldwin also cited the character's description as a factor in his departure, which called Thomas Wayne a cheesy and tan businessman modeled after a 1980s version of Donald Trump. Brett Cullen replaced Baldwin in the role, bringing a different interpretation to the Wayne patriarch. Shortly before filming commenced, Dante Pereira Olson was cast as young Bruce Wayne. De Niro, Cullen, Sheet Wiggum, Glenn Fleshler, Bill Camp, Josh Pace, and Douglas Hodge were all announced to have joined the film after principal photography had already begun, demonstrating the project's fluid casting process during production. Bradley Cooper joined Joker as a producer, continuing his collaboration with Phillips from their work together on previous films. Lawrence Sher was brought on as director of photography, another longtime Phillips collaborator known for his work on the Hangover trilogy and other comedies, though he had recently branched into more dramatic work. Filming principal photography on Joker commenced in September 2018 in New York City under the working title Romeo to maintain secrecy and avoid unwanted attention. The production utilized numerous locations throughout New York and New Jersey to create the dystopian vision of Gotham City set in the early 1980s. Lawrence Sher and Todd Phillips initially wanted to shoot the film on 65mm film stock for a 70mm theatrical release, believing this format would best capture the visual grandeur and texture they envisioned. However, Warner Brothers rejected this proposal due to cost considerations. The film was subsequently shot using Alexa 65 digital cameras, which could capture up to 5K resolution. Despite the studio's initial rejection of the 65mm format, Warner Brothers eventually gave Joker a limited theatrical release and converted 70mm and 35mm presentations, recognizing the film's artistic ambitions. The camera and lens choices were carefully selected to serve the film's aesthetic goals. The production used a variety of lens manufacturers, creating what Sher described as a Frankenstein package where each lens served a specific purpose. The cinematographer employed everything from a 21mm master built to a 35mm compact prime and a 58mm Nikon Nikkor for intimate, personal moments with the characters. This eclectic combination of lenses allowed Sher to vary the visual language depending on Arthur's mental state and the emotional tone of each scene. The film was set in Gotham City during the 1980s, deliberately crafted to evoke New York City during that era. Friedberg, the production designer, wanted Gotham to resemble the gritty city depicted in Taxi Driver. He meticulously named all structures and transportation lines in the film and drew a specific map of Gotham City to maintain geographic consistency. The production design featured brightly colored 1970s muscle cars on the streets, creating what Friedberg described as a sense of dissonance here being awful and beautiful simultaneously. He attempted to portray Gotham as a decaying metropolis through abundant graffiti, garbage on the roads, and cracked sidewalks. The visual effects team added fictional buildings to the skyline, changing the city's profile to create a sense that the urban environment was pressing down on Arthur, literally and metaphorically suffocating him. Lawrence Sher made distinctive lighting choices to reflect Arthur's psychological state and isolation. The cinematographer extensively used sodium vapor lights throughout the film, which produce an orange glow with hints of green. According to Sher, these lights represented Arthur's isolation while simultaneously suggesting his more hopeful side. The color palette was designed to replicate how the city would have been photographed on film stock in the 1980s, even though the production used digital cameras. Sher incorporated strong color variations with green tones in both the highlights and shadows, deliberately replicating the look of period film stock. The subway cars were particularly important to the film's visual language. These were depicted as dirty and filled with cyan green fluorescent lighting, which Sher described as uncorrected cool white fluorescent. While the screen spike could have been color-corrected out in post-production, the filmmakers deliberately retained it because they wanted the dirtiness of Gotham City to always be present in the visual palette. The subway scenes utilized a mixture of fluorescents that were never clean white light, always filtered with green tones. One of the most significant filming locations was the now famous staircase in the Bronx, connecting Shakespeare and Anderson Avenues in the High Bridge neighborhood. This location became iconic due to Arthur's climactic dance sequence. The stairs were originally part of the area that was considered dangerous during the 1980s but have since become a tourist destination following the film's release, much to the frustration of local residents. Emmett Koskoff, a producer on the film, revealed that the stair dance scene was the most stressful part of filming because New York City has no laws restricting paparazzi, and the production was constantly disrupted by photographers trying to capture images from the shoot. The South Bronx stairs used in American Gangster were originally considered for these scenes, according to the New York Times, but were ultimately deemed too repaved and beautified to achieve the aesthetic Phillips and Sher required for the film's gritty tone. Arthur's apartment complex was also located in the Bronx, on Anderson Avenue. The Bedford Park subway stop in the Bronx hosted filming, though the production also used an abandoned 9th Avenue station in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, for additional subway sequences. Downtown scenes depicting Gotham Square were actually filmed in Newark, New Jersey, on Market and Broad Streets. The location was an amalgamation of these actual streets and computer-generated imagery. Visual effects artists added background buildings and extended the main road to create the illusion of a large downtown avenue. The production team used practical techniques to transform Newark into 1980s Gotham, putting up period-appropriate signs and converting the existing Newark Paramount Theater into a pornographic theater, similar to those that were infamous in Times Square during the 1980s. Jersey City's William J. Brannan Courthouse doubled as Wayne Hall, the building where activists gathered to protest Thomas Wayne's mayoral campaign. In Brooklyn, the production utilized Brooklyn Army Terminal for Arkham Asylum sequences. Scenes were also filmed in Dumbo, the upscale neighborhood situated below the Manhattan Bridge. To ensure Dumbo fit the gritty aesthetic required by the film, the production made numerous practical modifications, including adding graffiti and placing piles of trash bags on street corners to suggest urban decay and neglect. In Manhattan, Phillips and his crew worked primarily in Chinatown and Harlem. Arthur Fleck's clown agency, Ha Ha's, was supposedly based in Harlem. The film's opening scene, where Fleck applies his clown makeup, was shot in a second-floor storage facility on the far west side of Manhattan. Support beams for New York's West Side Highway are visible through the window in these scenes, adding a sense of oppression and confinement from the very beginning of the film. Shortly before the Newark filming began, SAG-AFTRA received a complaint alleging that extras were locked in subway cars for more than 3 hours during filming in Brooklyn, constituting a violation of mandatory break requirements. The issue was quickly resolved after a union representative visited the set to investigate. Despite this incident, production continued relatively smoothly. Shea Wiggum, who played Detective Burke, stated toward the end of October 2018 that the film was in the middle of production, describing it as an intense and incredible experience. By mid-November, filming had moved back to various New York locations for additional sequences. The production officially wrapped on December 3, 2018, with Todd Phillips posting a commemorative picture on his Instagram feed later that month to mark the completion of principal photography. During filming, Joaquin Phoenix suffered a leg injury that required the production team to adapt their shooting approach. Lawrence Sher discussed in interviews how they worked around Phoenix's injury using various camera and lighting techniques to disguise his limited mobility during certain sequences. This challenge ultimately didn't compromise the final product, as Phoenix's committed performance remained physically demanding throughout. The production utilized LED projection technology for some subway scenes, an innovative technique that allowed for more realistic lighting and reflections within the train cars. This technology was still relatively new in 2018 and demonstrated the production's commitment to achieving authenticity in their visual presentation. Post-production Todd Phillips confirmed in March 2019 that he was in the editing process for Joker. The film was edited by Jeff Groth, who worked closely with Phillips to shape the narrative and pacing. The editing process was crucial in maintaining the film's deliberate, slow-burn approach to Arthur Fleck's transformation. The post-production process involved extensive collaboration between Phillips and his technical team to finalize the film's distinctive look. Colorist Jill Bogdanovich from the Los Angeles-based post-production facility Company 3 worked with Lawrence Sher to develop a custom-lit, lookup table that would help achieve the film's unique color grading. Sher described Bogdanovich as a crucial partner in establishing the visual aesthetic, with most of the heavy lifting happening during the look development phase. Even though significant finesse work continued until the end of post-production, the color grading process aimed to replicate the look and feel of 1980s film stock, incorporating the green spikes and warm tones characteristic of that era's cinematography. The team deliberately avoided clean, modern digital color correction, instead embracing the imperfections and color variations that would have been present in films from that period. The visual effects work, while relatively minimal compared to typical superhero films, was handled by several companies including Scanline VFX and Shade VFX. The VFX team's primary responsibility was extending and modifying New York locations to create the fictional Gotham City. They added buildings to skylines, extended streets, and created the oppressive urban environment that bears down on Arthur throughout the film. Captured Dimensions provided 3D scanning services, while Phantom FX contributed additional visual effects work. Prosthetic Renaissance handled practical makeup effects, though their work went uncredited. The sound design and mixing were equally important to the film's impact. Supervising sound editor Alan Robert Murray spoke about his collaboration with director Phillips and editor Jeff Groth, explaining how they used sound effects in conjunction with Hildur Guay******'''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''******* to enhance tension throughout the film. The team incorporated Foley effects, field recordings, and loop group work to add distinctive texture to the soundtrack, creating an immersive audio environment that complemented the visual decay of Gotham City. The film's aspect ratio remained consistent at 2.39:1 throughout, maintaining a widescreen format that allowed Sher's cinematography to breathe and emphasize Arthur's isolation within the expansive urban environment. This choice contrasted with many modern blockbusters that shift aspect ratios for IMAX sequences, instead maintaining a singular visual presentation throughout. Music. The musical score for Joker was composed by Icelandic composer Hildur Guðnadóttir, who had previously won critical acclaim and an Emmy Award for her work on the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. Todd Phillips signed on to direct Joker in August 2017 and immediately knew he wanted Guðnadóttir to compose the score after hearing her work on Sicario, Day of the Soldado, which he found beautiful and emotionally resonant. Guðnadóttir was announced as the composer for Joker early in the production process. Phillips took an unconventional approach by involving her before filming even began. The director turned to Guðnadóttir during pre-production, sending her script pages and asking her to compose music based on her emotional response to the material. Guay_Nade_Cubter described her collaboration with Phillips as a beautiful process, with the director curious to hear what she thought the story sounded like and asking her to compose based purely on her feelings about the screenplay. After reading the script, Guay_Nade_Cubter was deeply affected by the story. She loved the screenplay and found it resonated strongly with her. While she had known the Joker as a character since growing up in the early 1980s, Phillips' script revealed an emotional dimension to the character she hadn't previously envisioned. Guay_Nade_Cubter was fascinated by how Arthur was misunderstood by society, genuinely trying his best to fit in but unable to understand why he was different or where his feelings originated. Guay_Nade_Cubter sent Phillips a sample of her composition that included melodies that were deliberately simplistic and monotonic. Her intent was to conflate the film's gritty tone with Arthur Fleck's psychological state. This approach of using minimalist, repetitive musical phrases to represent the character's mental condition proved highly effective and became the foundation for the entire score. The October release date had additional strategic value because it placed Joker early enough in the fall season to build word-of-mouth momentum heading into awards season while avoiding the more crowded November and December release schedules. The positioning also allowed the film to capitalize on the beginning of the Halloween season, when audiences are traditionally more receptive to darker, more intense theatrical experiences. In the weeks leading up to the theatrical release, Joker became the center of significant controversy in security concerns. The film's depiction of Arthur Fleck's descent into violence and his transformation into a symbol for disenfranchised, angry individuals raised fears about potential copycat incidents. These concerns were amplified by the tragic 2012 Aurora, Colorado, movie theater shooting during a screening of The Dark Knight Rises, where the shooter had identified himself as the Joker. The families and friends of survivors from the Aurora shooting issued public statements expressing outrage and concern about Joker's release. They worried the film could inspire similar acts of violence by individuals who might identify with Arthur Fleck's grievances against society. The Century Aurora and XT Theater, the specific location where the 2012 shooting occurred, refused to show Joker, stating they would not screen the film out of respect for the victims and their families. In response to security concerns, the United States Army distributed a warning to service members about potential threats at screenings of Joker. The memo noted that online posts from extremist groups expressed interest in using the film's release as a potential target for violence. Law enforcement agencies increased security measures at theaters across the country, with some venues implementing bag checks and increased police presence during screenings. Warner Brothers and Todd Phillips defended the film against criticism, arguing that Joker was not an endorsement of violence but rather a character study that explored the consequences of societal neglect and systemic failures. Phillips emphasized that the film was a cautionary tale rather than a celebration of its protagonist's actions. The studio released statements affirming that the film does not aim to hold Arthur up as a hero and that it would make no sense if viewers sympathized with his violent acts. Despite the controversy and security concerns, Joker opened remarkable box office success. Initial tracking projected the film would debut between $65 and $80 million domestically, with some estimates reaching as high as $90 million. Industry analyst Paul Durgarabadian of Comscore thought the film might open closer to $50 million because it deviated significantly from typical comic book movie formulas. Joker exceeded even the most optimistic projections, opening to $96.2 million domestically from 4,374 theaters. The film earned $39.9 million on its opening day, including $13.3 million from Thursday night previews. This represented the best October opening weekend of all time, surpassing the record previously held by Venom. The opening weekend also established the biggest debut for a non-summer R-rated film. Internationally, Joker opened to $140.5 million from 73 overseas territories, bringing its global opening weekend total to $234 million. Some sources cite $248.4 million. This represented the biggest worldwide opening for an October release. The film's largest international markets during opening weekend were South Korea with $16.3 million, a Warner Brothers record in that territory, the United Kingdom with $14.8 million, Mexico with $13.1 million, and Japan with $7 million. The film's second weekend saw it earn $55.9 million domestically, representing a relatively modest 41.8% drop. This stronghold indicated positive word of mouth and broad audience appeal beyond just the film's core comic book fan base. The second weekend total marked the best October second weekend performance, surpassing Gravity's $43.1 million from 2013. Joker continued to demonstrate remarkable staying power throughout its theatrical run. In its third weekend, the film earned $29.2 million, and in its fourth weekend it made $19.2 million, finishing second behind Maleficent, Mistress of Evil both times. The film maintained strong performance through Halloween and into November, benefiting from positive word of mouth and award season buzz. During its fourth weekend of international release, industry analysts began projecting that Joker would become the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time and potentially cross the billion-dollar threshold. These projections proved accurate when Joker surpassed The Matrix Reloaded to become the highest-grossing R-rated film globally. The milestone was particularly remarkable given that Joker never received a theatrical release in China, the world's second-largest movie market, meaning the film achieved its success without access to what had become an essential territory for blockbuster performance. Approximately 1 month into its theatrical release, Joker crossed the historic $1 billion mark in worldwide box office receipts. The final global theatrical total reached $1.079 billion, comprising $335.5 million domestically and $743.5 million from international territories. Joker became the first R-rated film in history to gross over $1 billion worldwide, a record it would hold until Deadpool Wolverine surpassed it in 2024. The film ranked as the sixth highest-grossing film of 2019 globally, behind Avengers, Endgame, The Lion King, Frozen 2, Spider-Man, Far From Home, and Captain Marvel. It became the fourth highest-grossing R-rated film domestically, behind The Passion of the Christ, Deadpool, and American Sniper. It was also Warner Brothers' seventh film to cross the billion-dollar threshold, joining Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Aquaman, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, The Dark Knight Rises, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and The Dark Knight. After 155 days in theaters, Joker's American theatrical run concluded on March 5, 2020. The film's theatrical release was cut shorter than it might otherwise have been due to the emerging COVID-19 pandemic, which began forcing theater closures in March 2020. Given its modest production budget of $55 to $62.5 million, sources vary on the exact figure. Joker became one of the most profitable films of 2019 and one of the most profitable comic book adaptations in history. According to Deadline Hollywood's annual Most Valuable Blockbuster analysis, Joker generated approximately $437 million in profit for Warner Brothers and its co-financing partners after accounting for production costs, global marketing expenditures estimated at over $100 million, distribution fees, and talent participations. The film's success vindicated Warner Brothers' decision to greenlight the project with a relatively modest budget and R rating, demonstrating that comic book films could succeed outside the traditional PG-13 blockbuster model. The profitability also validated the creative risks taken by Phillips and Phoenix in crafting a dark, character-driven narrative that prioritized psychological depth over action spectacle. Home media. Following its successful theatrical run, Warner Brothers announced the home media release schedule for Joker. The film became available for digital purchase and rental on December 17, 2019, just 2 months after its initial theatrical release. When redeemed through intermediate, having been captured on a Alexa cameras capable of up to 5K resolution. The Dolby Vision grading enhanced the film's distinctive color palette, with the enhanced contrast and color volume adding depth to Lawrence Sher's cinematography. The audio presentation featured English Dolby Atmos with a Dolby True HD 7.1 Corp, along with French, Portuguese, and Spanish Dolby Digital 5.1 tracks. The Atmos mix was particularly praised by home theater enthusiasts for its immersive sound design, effectively utilizing height channels for atmospheric effects and creating a three-dimensional soundscape that enhanced the film's oppressive urban environment and Hilder degrees nat cubed score. The home media releases included a disappointingly modest selection of special features, particularly given the film's cultural impact and awards success. The bonus content consisted of 4 featurettes. Please Welcome, Joker was a 3-minute piece offering a brief look behind the scenes. Becoming Joker explored Joaquin Phoenix's preparation and approach to the character. Joker, a chronicle of chaos, provided insight into the production design and creation of Gotham City. Joker, Vision Fury focused on Todd Phillips' directorial vision and the film's cinematic influences. The relatively limited supplemental materials were noted in reviews of the home media releases, with many critics and fans expressing disappointment that the discs didn't include a director's commentary, deleted scenes, or more extensive making of documentaries. Given the film's controversial nature and artistic ambitions, many viewers were interested in more detailed insights into the creative process and the filmmaker's intentions. The home media releases were commercially successful, with Joker becoming one of the best-selling Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD releases of early 2020. The physical media sales contributed additional revenue to the film's overall profitability, and the premium 4K presentation was praised for allowing viewers to appreciate the films. When I saw Joker at the Venice Film Festival 5 years ago, I took extreme and indignant umbrage with it, and I poured out that indignation, as some readers thought inappropriately, in a hastily written review. I was later informed that I could have taken some time to cool off. A review embargo for the film stood in effect for another 5 hours after I filed my notice. Because I did not want to give away plot spoilers, I did not reveal the main source of my indignation. What set me off was the film's climax, in which Joaquin Phoenix's Arthur Fleck, now gone almost full Joker, appears on a late-night talk show hosted by glib showman Murray Franklin, Robert De Niro. Franklin's object is a mockery of the man in the clown makeup, but Arthur has the last laugh. He pulls out a gun and blows Franklin's brains out on live TV. This rocked me in a very not good way, in part because I was fairly confident that this story point was inspired by the 1987 on-air suicide of Pennsylvania political figure R. Bud Dwyer. Footage of him taking his own life was, of course, edited for news reports, but I was at the time enough of a media insider that I was able to watch the unexpurgated footage of the suicide. And to this day, I wish I hadn't. The similarities between the real-life event and what director Todd Phillips staged struck me as too specific to be coincidental. I considered what Phillips and Phoenix, and, yes, De Niro, have done to be unforgivably opportunistic nihilism. So there you have it. In case you were wondering, in my review, I wrote, in mainstream movies today, a dark is just another flavor. Like a edgy, it's an option you use depending on what market you want to reach, and it is particularly useful when injected into the comic book genre. And now I'm back on the Joker beat for the sequel, Joker, Folia, which, as you have no doubt heard, is a musical, written and directed, as the first film was, by Todd Phillips. Phillips didn't write the songs, thankfully. This is largely a jukebox musical, with selections from the Great American Songbook, Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, and a 60s international pop, To Love Somebody, originated by the Bee Gees and further popularized by Janis Joplin, and more. And the best thing I can say about it is that it clearly does not take marketing, as it's conventionally understood, into consideration. Through the years, as the Batman legend has kept evolving, so has his arch-villain nemesis, the clown prince of crime. Every era gets the Joker it deserves, and under the grease paint, This most iconic of bad guys is a complex character. He needs to be funny to become truly terrifying. Joaquin Phoenix is primed to take on the role in Todd Phillips' heavily anticipated new Joker, but the intense star is just the latest wild card in a stacked deck of you-know-whats. Here's a breakdown of the actors who have defined Gotham City's giggling madmen over the years, rated 1 to 10. https://www.youtube.com/watch V equals Oscar J_Big Caesar Romero. The originator. Romero invented the Joker as we know him today. On TV's flamboyantly playful 60s Batman TV show, he battled the dynamic duo of Adam West and Burt Ward, with his crazed cackle, maniacal grin and untamed, emerald green hair. Romero was old Hollywood all the way. He was known as the Latin from Manhattan, a Cuban-American leading man who played dashing cads in films like Orchestra Wives, 1942. The actor was so dedicated to his super suave image, he refused to shave his mustache for the part. Romero just painted over it. Nearly 60 when he took the role, Romero remains the most influential clown prince of crime. Even Bob Dylan adopted the TV villain's look in the early 2000s. Goths take note. Romero is the only Joker to date who's also played Dracula. On Rod Serling's Night Gallery, I'll admit that when trailers first emerged for 2019's Joker, I was skeptical to say the least. I am neither a DC comic fan, nor superhero movie fan, and I felt less than confident in Todd Phillips, director of deep and thought-provoking pictures such as Borat and The Hangover, that he'd successfully bring to life one of the most love-to-hate-them bad guys in all of media, in a way that was insightful to his past and explained his rise to Gotham City infamy. Joaquin Phoenix being case gave me hope, but the real factor that prompted me to log on to drafthouse.com and pick my seats for the week of its release, was all of the buzz I was hearing from the media and the public. Audiences loved it, and critics hated it, and that to me meant it had to be good, and I was right. Joker is a compelling and thought-provoking film that made me walk out of the theater with a new outlook on life. And no, I'm not exaggerating. I haven't used the term must-see to describe a film in so long, due to the fact that I rarely find that a movie has a message behind it that I think everyone could apply to their own lives. But Joker said something about society and the human experience that I think everyone could relate to and learn from, something that those who control the media we consume don't want us to think about too hard. Warning: this review contains some spoilers. Critics versus audiences. The media frenzy surrounding Joker was intense to say the least. I saw publication after publication bashing it and high-profile critic after high-profile critic saying it was horrible and toxic, etc. It seemed like every esteemed critic and journalist out there was trying to convince me not to see it. However, every single YouTube film critic or small-time journalist I follow all seemed to praise it, and every friend of mine who saw it for themselves said it was a great film as well. A complicated but ultimately empty film. About the film. Talking about this movie is like trying to jog a brisk 5K race through a minefield. Joker is perhaps the most talked about and buzzworthy movie of the year, and not always for positive reasons. On the one hand, there are critics and viewers who've dubbed the movie as a masterpiece. On the other hand, some viewers and media outlets have raised the mass hysteria and condemned it as a danger to society. In the end, however, Joker turns out to be neither. This is as much a mixed bag as any movie I've reviewed this year. The doomsday-level panic and alarm raised toward this film is grossly misplaced, but it is certainly no masterpiece or monumental film either. Joker exists much like its titular character in a messy and largely unsatisfactory no man's land between these two extremes. From a technical and cinematic standpoint, Joker is an expertly crafted film. The cinematography is inventive and consistently interesting. The music is phenomenal, and Joaquin Phoenix is mesmerizing in the title role. Although in a much different movie, Phoenix absolutely deserves to be enshrined alongside the late Heath Ledger and the Joker Hall of Fame. The main problem with the film, however, is that beneath these outwardly captivating elements, The film feels so utterly empty. We live in a landscape where words like reboot and retcon are common knowledge. Hollywood executives use the word multiverse in complete seriousness. No one can talk about Batman in the movies anymore. You have to specify Nolan Batman, Snyder Batman, Reeves Batman, Bryan Singer's Magneto, or the First Class one, Raimi Spider-Man, or The Amazing Run, or the MCU version. Superhero movies don't have to explain comics anymore. They can just be like comics, a places for creative folks to drop in, do their take on a long-established character, and see what the audience thinks about it. The gift this era has given me, as a comics fan and a critic, is a new thought experiment. What would I think of the superhero movie if it had been a comic book? Did the movie find something insightful to say about the decades-old character? Did it play well in the space, relative to all the other stories that have gone before it? I think Matt Reeves' The Batman might actually have been even better as a 12-issue out-universe miniseries, giving its characters more time to breathe in a new variation on Gotham. On the other hand, the original Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, has so much to say about Spider-Man's themes of responsibility and identity, and it's also so inventive with the form of the animated film that converting it into a comic would definitely rob it of some of its magic. But this year, I found my experiment running aground when considering Todd Phillips' Joker duology. Setting aside my own problems with Phillips' writing and directing, did these two movies, which reimagined the Joker as the alternately pathetic and dangerous failed comedian turned successful murderer Arthur Fleck, have something to say about the iconic supervillain, and how did that statement measure up against the comics themselves? With Joker, Foliated and now streaming on Max, it seemed like a good time to reconsider the question. And here's my conclusion: Todd Phillips' Joker movies don't have anything to say about Joker comics, because they are simply not about the character of the Joker in any recognizable way. Discussion. Verdant sat December 28, 2024. I agree with most of this, though I don't necessarily think that it's impossible to write a story about the Joker if it delves into him as a person. Batman, White Knight is a comic story about curing the Joker's undefined mental illness, and much of the story revolves around Jack Napier and who he is as a person both before and after being the Joker. I suppose you could argue that the story works because it's about Joker as an identity instead of as a person. Notably, Napier scarcely remembers his time as the Joker, and a lot of the details are left intentionally ambiguous beyond this incarnation being a relatively harmless threat. But at the end of the day it does flesh out the man behind the Joker without sacrificing the character. That being said, you're right that these movies aren't really about the Joker. Strong characters can have their aspects replaced and reimagined, but if you replace too many you've just ship of Theseus-ed them into someone else. A Joker with a backstory can still be the Joker. A Joker with a backstory, a different personality, no gimmicky crimes, and no Batman is just a guy in clown paint. I am Death the Kid Moan Jan 06 2025 in reply to @Captain Radio. A Joker with a backstory can still be the Joker. A Joker with a backstory, a different personality, no gimmicky crimes, and no Batman is just a guy in clown paint. That is one of the main points that the second movie focuses on. Arthur Fleck isn't the Joker. He was just a gay in clown paint who snapped, and no one seems to get that. Everyone just used it either as an excuse to either become their own Jokers, or spread anger, callousness, and fear-mongering that leads to the creation of more Jokers anyway. Verdant 2 Jan 07 2025 in reply to I am Death the Kid. Oh yeah. It's genuinely an impressive trick that the entire sequel basically was an elaborate fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me joke played on the audience. The twist ends up being a well-constructed joke with enough meta layers to make Grant Morrison tear up. The only flaw with it is that it just isn't really funny to anyone that'd actually be interested in hearing it. It's a Scorsese-inspired remake of that middle school gag where your friend says, "Do I have a stain on my pants?" and then slaps you upside the head when you look down and see the thigh sign they're flashing on their thigh. It's decently funny to passive observers, hilarious to the person telling the joke, and just pisses off the actual audience by making them the punchline. I don't really care about the Joker movies BTW, I'm just passionate about comedy theory, and I think I'm gonna use these movies as a loose meta example next time I teach a workshop. No capes son. December 29, 2024. Every time Susanna drops a banger piece, I shall just know better than to read the comments. Pearls before swine, for real. Ben Masharo's son. December 29, 2024. For real, I'm just here with my popcorn reading through the comments, because the negative energy fuels my dark soul. Someone who gets it son. December 29, 2024. In reply to @Ben Masharos. You mean the negative energy that she created by writing an ignorant article which clearly shows she didn't get the movies, and yet she's on her soapbox preaching about how they were done wrong? Spoiler alert. They can't be the origin stories of the Joker. If he dies before ever meeting Batman, Arthur Fleck is not and never was the Joker. So for someone to act like they're the wise and almighty voice of truth and wisdom despite the fact that they clearly didn't get what happened, and in a negative manner, well, you get what you effing deserve. For the record, I have no issue with someone disliking these movies. My issue is with someone spreading misinformation. What I want to get into the skulls of this particular kind of superhero filmmaker is that comics have already done the work. Wish I could explain this to all people complaining about how superheroes are bad but who don't read comics. Every complaint you have about how Batman just beats up poor people or superheroes are fascist or whatever, comic writers thought of that decades ago and did a few stories exploring that. Comic writers are mindless hacks writing garbage for kids. Well, not all of them. They're just as thoughtful as filmmakers, and I don't mean that both ways. Uncle Mumbly's son. December 29, 2024. When the first one came out, I saw someone describe it as a dumb person's idea of a smart movie, and that still seems pretty accurate. I have not seen the second one, and probably never will. But from the sounds of it, Phillips basically doubled down on that same description. Polygon_user_M59ZLXHL son. December 29, 2024. I guess whoever called it a dumb person's idea of a smart movie missed the point of the movie. The whole point of the movie was to show society how it treats mentally vulnerable people and to be careful because once you push crazy over the edge it will have very violent consequences. That's why he gets beat up by kids in the opening scenes. He goes from being so vulnerable that kids beat him up to an ultra-violent cult figure. It's all down to how the world and those who are supposed to care for him treat him. It's a very intelligent movie if you actually understand the whole point of it. Someone who gets it. Son. December 29, 2024. Hey, someone actually gets it. At Y Currency Macron Captain Argyle Moan Jan 06 2025 in reply to @Polygon_user_M59ZLXHL. I guess whoever called it the dumb person's idea of a smart movie missed the point of the movie. No, we all got it. It's not subtle in any way, shape, or form. It's that other movies have done this idea better. Blow the Rip Enjoyer sat. December 28, 2024. Spot on. Haven't seen the second one, but the first one is just the king of comedy with the Joker reskin. Phillips clearly wanted to make an addition to the Scorsese wannabe universe, not a comics-inspired one. Polygon_user_M5-66 Tuesday, December 31, 2024. Compare and contrast this with the Dark Knight Joker who keeps telling people a different origin story every scene he's in, which hangs a lampshade on the importance of him not having a relatable framework of motivations, and being in it entirely for the chaos. Deaths at December 28, 2024. I feel like this an issue with many of the more current versions of Batman, up to and including the Nolanverse. Once you overly ground these characters, they lose everything that made them interesting in the first place. Like I think Ledger's Joker literally could have been any other character and he wouldn't have had to change a thing about how he played the character, all because Nolan, and audiences it seems, just want overly grounded, dark and gritty characters when these characters are supposed to be over the top, especially ones like the Joker. Yo Vargas sat. December 28, 2024. Sorry if this is a spoiler, but if you are reading this article, I'll assume that you have watched the second movie. The Joker is the guy that society tortured into the Joker. In that sense, It seems like the Todd Phillips movie isn't a horrible take, maybe too specific, maybe cack-handed, maybe too artless, missing the mark, but at least aiming at it. Polygon_user_M5E98P85 WebGen01 2025 I haven't seen the second Joker movie, don't really plan to. I like the first one for what it was after watching in theaters, but upon rewatch, realized it was just recycled tropes about downtrodden or abused men doing violent things. As if I need a reminder of that. I notice that it's supposed to be a critique of rooting for the bad guy, and of comic book movies, etc. To me, it's just using IP for the director to make a thin op-ed piece into a movie. It feels dated already. If you take Joaquin Phoenix's performance out of the first film, what is left? There's nothing highbrow or deeply intellectual going on here. The Joker is a symbol of mindless chaos and violence. He's not a real person, and doesn't have an origin story for a reason. It's entropy versus order. Turning him into an incel school shooter with mental health issues isn't creative or thought-provoking. It's entirely different thematically and misses the point, and one that has been done to death by actually talented writers and directors. Phillips branding it as the Joker is just some kind of lame joke. Wow, you really got me. And if Fleck isn't even supposed to be the Joker, then what's the point? A two-film origin story for a character that isn't even on screen? Cheap and weak writing, and just another studio money grab using old IP. R.I.P. Heath Ledger. Probably the best portrayal of the Joker we'll ever see on screen. It's much scarier to have a character with no attachments or motivation. There's a reason why that movie is a modern classic and still mostly holds up, whereas the Phillips duology will only be looked at negatively. Polygon_user_M5BPZ38 Team on December 30, 2024 Absolutely right, I was looking forward to an origin story about the real Joker, but what we got was some story about a mentally disturbed man using the Joker intellectual property to bring in viewers. Polygon_user_M58GHJK4 Sat December 28, 2024 Essentially, Arthur Fleck isn't the Joker in the recent Joker films, though. Spoiler alert. MXH1 Sat December 28, 2024 Essentially the movie is called The Joker and stars Joaquin Phoenix as an unstable, violent clown. I haven't seen the sequel, but in the first film, he is the titular Joker Uncle Mumbly's son December 29, 2024 which makes the obvious question, WTF is even the point of these movies then? Someone who gets it son December 29, 2024 again. The point is a middle finger to comic book movies hijacking cinema, to the know-it-all fans who think they're smarter, and to people who think we're supposed to root for the bad guy. Mark Lacroix son December 29, 2024 There is no point to the Joker. I hated those movies before it was cool to hate them, but their premise was to not really be comic book movies and show a wholly different concept for the character. That they took nothing more than the name was intentional. Did they fail in basically every way? Yes, but not because they didn't get the character. They were just bad movies, which is why it's wild that some people were trying to tie the end of the second one into the wider comic book mythos, as if the connections between them were anything more than Easter eggs. In the Joker movies, Joker was just some guy. Yes, but that's allowed. Nerd Rage son December 29, 2024 The point of the Joker is mutable. If you want to use him in another story, then he does need interiority or he's just an empty cipher who's hard to write about, especially as a protagonist. Brian Davian son December 29, 2024 Then maybe he shouldn't be a protagonist. Mark Lacroix on December 30, 2024 In reply to @Nerd Rage If you want to use him in another story, then he does need interiority or he's just an empty cipher. I guess that's why they gave him interiority in those movies. Then, again, they were very bad movies, but making the Joker into something unlike previous incarnations in a fundamental way is not the reason why. Since this thread is unofficially also about all our fave Joker stories, please accept my humble offering of any Joker story written by Tom King, especially The War of Riddles and Jokes, concept self-explanatory, and Batman and Catwoman, suggesting the Joker is a jealous ex to both parties in the lead-up and aftermath of their wedding. Neither of these stories are earth-shattering Batman literature, if such a thing exists, and yet Tom King's Joker is one of the most profoundly unpredictable and funny psychopaths ever committed to drawn page. Bellows Monjano 6 2025 I don't think there is a wrong way to do this character. He's a clown who has been locked in ideological combat with a bat for 85 years. Big and often messy swings with the character keep it fresh. Polygon_user_M59Z1H42 Sun December 29, 2024 The absence of his origin is his origin and the strength of it. HVNSPWN Frigano 3 2025 She has said the part 1 have been telling folks for years about these movies. If you strip away all the Batman and DC iconography from it, it's not the Joker, it's just some psycho guy. In effect, I really smell like the story was inspired by Batman comics, but they use the Batman brand to sell tickets, which robs it of any courageous story angle. It becomes cash grabby. Polymember Frigano 3 2025 I agree. I've only seen the first film, and thought it was a perfectly serviceable bit of mental health, drama porn, but it's not a good Joker film. Polygon_user_M59WLQQR Sun December 29, 2024 I agree with most of this interpretation, but I think there is one more nuance to make them real foils. The core principle of Batman's world is that senseless evil things happen. When faced with those things, Batman tries to do something about it, even if it's arguably a misguided approach. The Joker chooses the other path, reveling in the chaos and seeing how far he can take it. I think that aspect of what choice they've made in response to this important fact of the world is important in defining the characters. Will Entrican Sat December 28, 2024 Batman's Dark Mirror as great as Ledger was. Going into The Dark Knight I'd wished Nolan had cast Bale and dual roles to really explore this idea. I can't remember how far I made it through the first Joker movie before I shut it off because I was bored, but it wasn't very far at all, so no comment there. Polygon_user_M5A3H0XS Sat December 28, 2024 The Joker movies got the story perfect. Most people just didn't get the joke. Polygon_user_M5A3H0XS Sun December 29, 2024 The Folie du X wasn't between Arthur and Harley, it was between Arthur and the man in the last scene, Baldwin.